Hey guys, this is Nick from EGN Now, and what you are seeing here is footage from the second Far Cry 5 event that I got to attend recently. This event, unlike the last one, started us right from the beginning of the game. We got to look at how our character, who's a sheriff's deputy, we go into Hope, Montana in an attempt to arrest Father Joseph Seed, who is the leader of this big, evil cult. And obviously things go awry, and you are stranded in Montana, and you have to sort of learn the land and make friends with the resisting population in an effort to sort of dismantle his cult. Right now, the game does not start on a star-spangled ATV. It starts with cinematics and everything, but that's just one of the many shenanigans you can get up to in the game. Right here, I am assaulting one of the many outposts spread across the map. The gunplay in Far Cry games in general has always been something that has really resonated with me. Like I just love the ballistic physics. I love just like the feeling and the weight of the guns. It's always been a very satisfying first-person shooter for me. I'm not doing so hot with this machine pistol because the accuracy is all over the place. But so the assault of this outpost, just like previous Far Cry games, this will give me control of the outpost, and I can establish like shops in it and etc. It sort of becomes like a hub for me and pushes the enemy out of the territory. But more specifically, the assault on this particular outpost, this gives me access to one of the game's guns for hire support characters, which you're about to see. And her name is, this particular one, her name is Jess Black, and she's sort of a stealth-focused guns for hire. She can do stealth takedowns, and she can also talk to, like, animals, she can, like, bring animals to your side. And all the different guns for hire, and there's 7 or more of them, all the different guns for hire have different abilities, depending on sort of their theme, and you can use those and they kind of affect your playstyle. In addition to the guns for hire, there's also, I believe they're called friends for hire, and they're sort of just random civilians you pick up in the world that are willing to come fight for you. And I have one of each. I have Jess on right now, and some random dude who's following me around. And so I was trying the stealthy approach. It didn't quite go according to plan, but it's nice to have those characters in tow. I don't know how much they're gonna affect the game really. I'm gonna have to get some more time with it to really see like the impact they actually have. But for now, they seem like a nice way to sort of help you kind of customize how you want to play. But if you're tired of the guns for hire, Far Cry 5 also has online co-op, just like 4, not 3, if I'm remembering correctly. So the online co-op, the implementation of it isn't. It's not super sophisticated, there's not a ton to it. It's sort of drop in, drop out, like come in, and you guys can just mess around. You can do, I believe, all of the story missions are accessible or playable through co-op, and then just any capturing outposts, just causing anarchy. It's just a fun way. Co-op inherently, I think, is just a good way to enjoy a game, right? Like more people makes it more fun. And Far Cry 5 gives us the option to just have someone drop on in and just cause anarchy together. And then in addition to blowing stuff up and whatnot, Far Cry, which the series I think is kind of known for, Far Cry 5 has just some things you can just kind of mess around with. And this, as an example, is a cliff that I can wingsuit off of. And as you can see, my teammate tried it first, didn't quite work out the way she intended, I think. But it's working a little better for me. As you can see, coming up in a second, it yells at me for getting too far away from my teammate, but the game then pulls her toward me. So I still have to kind of fiddle with it to see how that's going to work with the distance in between characters. But because it seems to be damaging me, but then it doesn't, and then it just teleports her. So it's a little unclear at the moment. But then we have this, which I think is sort of the pinnacle of what was offered at this event. And this is Far Cry Arcade. Now, if you remember from Far Cry 3, it had the map editor, This is sort of an extension on that, in that you can create maps and create full single-player missions, cooperative missions, and even multiplayer competitive maps. Now, on the single-player and cooperative side, kind of like what I was saying with the co-op before, it's just fun to play with friends, and it's going to be even more fun because you're making these missions. You're adding the enemies, you're adding like boss characters, you're adding the weapons you can use, and a full map layout. You are creating your own missions, which kind of makes the game's content endless, right? It's going to be a seamless, or I'm sorry, not seamless, an endless amount of different missions to play, whether it be the ones you make or the ones you find online. It's a really good idea for keeping the game alive. And then when you get into the multiplayer side, that's a huge deal, because the developers haven't really announced a competitive multiplayer, and they just sort of slid it on in here. It's like, hey, Far Cry 5, by the way, also has competitive multiplayer, which is, for a lot of gamers, is a huge deal. I mean, I remember from Far Cry 3, I used that map editor, and I believe that was the last Far Cry game to have a map editor, if I'm remembering correctly. But I remember that map editor, I would make like I made like a D-Day map where there's like a small island with a bunch of boats, and then like a big island with like gun turrets on it, and like, one team would have to come over to the other, and like that was super cool, and that was really fun, and it didn't really work out the way I intended, but the creation of it was very satisfying. And this now has that opportunity, and what I think is great about this strategy over making a full multiplayer suite themselves being Ubisoft, is that there's a lot of concern when it comes to multiplayer experiences in really narrative heavy single player games, in that people are worried that the multiplayer, that the resources put in time put into the development of the multiplayer will sacrifice the quality of the single player if they're having to divide their focus. But what's great about the way they're doing it with the Far Cry Arcade is that all the maps are created by us, the community. So if it works, great, it has a great competitive multiplayer experience. If it doesn't work, it can still just be fun to mess around in, and there was nothing really lost here. There's nothing on the single player side that was like sacrificed to make this happen. Sure, they had to create the creation tools, and they had to balance it to a certain extent, but ultimately it's a very easy way to allow the player base to just sort of play the way they want without needing much attention. And honestly, I played it. We played a couple rounds of the competitive multiplayer, and it worked great. It's not very overly technical. It's a pretty kind of generic, might be a mean word, but kind of generic first-person shooter. There's swimming and there's like barrels and to explode and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's there, and it's better than it not being there. And beyond that, the demo that I played was really good. If you remember back from my previous Far Cry video, a lot of bugs. It had a lot of bugs in it, and this one, much better. Like a significant, evident improvement on a technical side. And that's important, because I was concerned. We were kind of close up. We were getting close up on the launch last time I played it, and now we are significantly closer. We have only about a month, and it seems like the improvements they made since that last demo are drastic. So that gives me hope for the game. It's got a lot of content now. The Far Cry Arcade, easily the greatest takeaway from the event that I played, and just the amount of content that I think that adds is huge. And apart from that, again, the gameplay really solid. The story looks like it's coming together really nicely, and at the end of the day, it will just come down to getting in there with the review copy and really kind of taking apart its intricacies. So yeah, that's Far Cry 5 overall. I would say be optimistic about it. And I'm Nick. Thanks for joining me, and this is EGM.